All right, we're back. Dynasty Trades in 5. I'm Clay.
I'm Shane.
That's all you got? I'm Scott, and I'm not looking for a quarterback job, even though I might be as good as some of the ones that aren't getting ones.
Yeah, so tonight we're gonna do a show kind of on QB2s in Dynasty. There's been a lot of movement, obviously, with QBs lately. You have Matt Ryan moving on. You've got Mariota getting a gig in Atlanta. So there's only a few more quarterbacks who are really unsettled still. But let's talk about the value of the ones who even just moved. Scott, let's move it to you.
Well, so let's just a caveat. We are definitely talking about just by default 12 team, right? 12 team setup.
Yep.
10 starters. So it's not the same as when you're getting into 14 team, 16 team, 2 QB, where the scarcity is different. Like value of just having a starter for one game is worth a lot more than it might be when, it's only a 12 team league with a Superflex. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just looking back. We've talked about this before, but looking at the separation between basically the haves and the have-nots, and realize that a lot of these guys, that their situations have changed over the last couple of weeks, are more than likely, other than Watson, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, any of the ones that were shopped that were on the high end. Everyone else are the have-nots. Mariota, Trubisky, Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield. All these guys are the have-nots. They are there for a reason, not necessarily because they're not good enough to start, but there's probably questions about their longevity. But more importantly, there's definitely a difference between how they score compared to the other guys that are above them. So I think that's the big thing, is understanding your scoring in your league and understanding the delta between the haves and the have-nots. When I say haves and have-nots, it isn't super scientific either. Like when we're talking startup values, you're going to put Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance in the haves. From a production perspective, you're not going to look at them and say, well, they're clearly haves, but we value them as QB1s or close to it in Dynasty for a reason. But of course, if they continue on the path that they were last year for another year or two, we're going to push them down and basically determine that they're just not that good. So then it's just going to be, what's their fantasy ceiling compared to everybody else's. So I think this discussion is going to be, what do I do if I have all of these have-nots? What do I do if I have Mariota, Trubisky, Winston? A couple weeks ago, they weren't really worth much. Now, what are they worth? And then at the same time, what do I do if I have 3 high-end quarterbacks? How do I manipulate that? I don't want to give up the advantage because I'm hoarding one from somebody else. And I don't necessarily want to trade to get a QB2. I don't want to downgrade to Mariota or Trubisky, but I definitely want to look to cash in at other positions as well. So I think understanding your scoring, understanding the windows of, okay, I know who the QB2s are. I know who the have-nots are. Now I need to take advantage of the window of when I can actually sell them. And maybe that's during the season for a lot of these guys. What I've found personally is a lot of these guys, they're only going to be valued in the season when somebody really needs to start somebody. Right now, it's like, okay, sure, Mitch Trubisky could start this year. But it doesn't really feel like it feels like he's worth more on my roster than it is to trade him for a late second.
Yeah, I think that's it right there. The league's going to dictate if I'm holding on to these guys or not right now. If I'm, putting Winston and Mariota and Mitch Trubisky, and I guess we'll throw Drew Lock in there. But if I'm throwing them on the trade block and the only offers I'm getting are thirds, well, I can get a third in season. That's not cashing out high. So I'm just going to hold on to them. Chances are none of these guys are going to turn into Ryan Tannehill. They're going to turn into the other 7 quarterbacks that got second opportunities and ended up not doing anything with them, and they'll fade away in obscurity. But if my only loss on that is a 3rd round rookie pick, that's fine. We saw it last year with Sam Darnold. Nobody liked Sam Darnold entering the season last year, right? And he had 3 good games, and you could have traded him for a first, which you should have done. You should have done immediately. You should have gone, all right, he's gone. I'm just getting rid of him, which is basically what you should do with pretty much any of these quarterback 2s. If I had to bet on any of them, it'd probably be Jameis, because, well, he's the only one with any real talent, I think. But that's really besides the point. I mean, it's kind of besides the point, right? I can't imagine anyone's giving you anything higher than a third for Mariota right now. I'll tell you that. If someone's willing to give you a second, that might be one I'm willing to cash out on right now because I can't see how his stock is going to rise once we see him play. Yeah, I'll hold on to him now unless someone makes me change my mind because I can get if I'm getting lowballed now, I can at least get that in season as well because we've seen it. We've traded thirds for Chad Henneys, for Brett Rippins, guys like that we've picked up and then immediately trade it for a third. So I can at least get a third for these guys at worst in season. So I'll just hold on to them unless I can get 206 or better.
Okay. Mitch Trubisky or the 202?
No, I'll take the 202 and Mitch is gone.
Yeah, I agree. I think you asked two questions where essentially you are betting that these guys not only start for the whole season. There's still a chance that there's a lot of these guys that end up getting competition, and maybe we make the bet that none of the rookie quarterbacks this year are going to start right away. But I think Shane absolutely nailed it with determine who's in this group of have-nots for you, and then just sell at the peak point. You mentioned Sam Darnold. You could have done the same thing with Carson Wentz early on in the season last year. He had a peak point like kind of mid-year after they rebounded from him being injured early on. Same thing. Like most of the time, these guys turn back to pumpkins, and at best, I mean, think about you mentioned Ryan Tannehill, right, Shane? Mm-hmm. Think at his career progression over the last 3 years because he was really good in 2019 and really good in 2020, and he got a little worse in 2021. But think about how he's valued right now. Think about how he was valued after 2020. Like he had some value, but like it wasn't a guarantee you could even get a first for him in a 12-team league. And that's the peak. Like that's the 10% outcome for these guys.
And he had to put up 2 really efficient high touchdown percentage seasons in a row in order to even get that level of value.
The team did well. The team committed to him long term. That's when people were willing to buy in. So if you have these guys that get off to a hot start and they're playing on a 1-year deal or even a 2-year deal with basically the second year is fake where the team can just replace them with no cost, that's just when you sell. And, I'm willing to wait. I happen to really like, Marcus Mariota, but I'll wait until that team secures him later on, with a 3-year deal, then I'll go buy because I have a feeling that even then he's at like Tannehill's price right now, which you could get him for a first. So I think our discussion here is basically like if you can get a 202 for Mitch Trubisky, sure, maybe I'm giving up that random guy that'll give me a first after he smashes for 3 games. But that's it. That's like such a slim opportunity. There's a much higher likelihood that Mitch Trubisky's on the bench in week 6. So you got to factor in when to sell.
So
Pause for 10 seconds. I'm changing rooms. Hold on.
It's like one of those, like, it's flashing because he needs help. You know what I mean? Like, are we supposed to do something? Do I call the ambulance? Like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, so with guys like let's take Mariota for example. You can't do things like tack on a 102 and move up to a big boy, move way up in tiers. What about taking another have-not? Like we haven't talked about Baker yet, and selling Baker for Marcus Mariota and the 209. Which side do you like?
Honestly, I think people would rather have Mariota over Baker.
Yeah, if I'm getting the 209 at this point, because Baker's already fallen into that Mariota, where we're hoping he gets a chance to start again someday somewhere.
So what about Matt Ryan or Mitch Trubisky and the 301?
That's a good one. I think you could argue the Trubisky side just because, like, I happen to like Matt Ryan as a buy because no one values him at all, but he could give you – he's one of those guys because he's been in the league, 14 years now? I'm pretty sure unless he's retired, he's probably starting unless he's absolutely so bad. I mean, think of like Phillip Rivers for the Colts in 2020. Like that's probably what you get out of Matt Ryan maybe. And unless he retires, like they could basically bring them back again if they don't have another quarterback. So I kind of like Matt Ryan as a buy. I was just going to mention, I think the one place you can make some money on these types of quarterbacks is buy the ones that no one values because they're so old. So AKA Matt Ryan. Sell the ones that people value because they're quote unquote young, but they're not any good. I mean, the one thing we can learn from this is, Winston, Trubisky, Mariota, they're all getting more shots, right? Because they were high draft picks. So I tend to just look at it like sell those guys now, buy the guys that get benched. So buy Baker if he drops down to like late third, early fourth round value because he doesn't get a job. And then someone's going to give him another shot and then sell him then for a second. But it's easy profit. I think that's how you spin it. What would you pay in picks, Shane, for Tannehill? 112?
I was about to say whatever the last first is.
Yeah,
okay, so
I mean, look, if I'm quarterback desperate and I don't want to tear down to that scary QB2 guys, I think I'm willing to go 110, 111 for Tannehill and maybe even throw in a later second or a second down the road.
If anyone's coming to you to upgrade or to buy one of these quarterbacks and you're getting a pick, get one of the non-desirable starters back. Get Case Keenum back or whoever the backups end up settling out to be. Yep. Get the highest valued backups back, especially when we get closer to the season. I mean, how many quarterbacks start in a season? Like 55, 60? I mean,
yeah. So another name for that could be like Taylor Heineke, right? Just go
perfect.
ahead and get Heineke put in. Yep.
Perfect. Love it.
Shane's shaking his head.
No, Taylor Heineke for fantasy
he's got a great spot.
Right he was fine. He was fine. He's definitely a guy that if he gets
in front of him,
if he gets thrown in there for 3 or 4 games, yeah, I definitely have no problem whatsoever starting him.
Yeah, and I love that example, Clay. That's the perfect guy to get thrown in because most people have him on their team right now, and they're probably debating when they get to the rookie draft, like, can I drop this guy? You know what I mean? Like they're partially sitting there going, I don't want him. Like he's the kind of guy you see posted on the trade block now.
Yeah.
And you literally throw out the 412, you know what I mean? Like, and that's where I'd actually buy some of these guys that I've seen them produce for fantasy before, and just collect them. As we get closer to the season, I want to collect these types.
All right. So if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the channel, browse the playlist. We've done tons of players at this point, bunch of different strategy shows. Hit that subscribe if we earned your business. At the very least, give us a like and follow us on Instagram. We started posting stuff on Instagram. Barely people do that. Follow us on the Insta. We're going to be super cool there too.
Yeah, make sure you're following on the Insta because I'm doing all these cool TikTok challenges. Oh wait, that's a different thing. Never mind.